or even of heaven, it does it mean that it necessarily doesn't exist just because the Torah doesn't mention that?
I never said it doesn't exist. I even said I believe in it.
Okay.
But I'm just saying that the Torah doesn't require you to believe in it. It seems like God wants you to be more
preoccupied with this world, how I live and how I lead my life, rather than being worried about what's going to happen after I leave this world. Is that what you're trying to say, Rabbi?
I believe in a heaven and a hell, but the Torah, it seems like the Torah is more preoccupied or wants us to be more preoccupied with this world and trying to make this world better than trying to get into some afterlife. If you take it to its most illogical conclusion, you have radical Islam. All these radical Muslims are fed up with this world to such a point that they're ready to blow themselves up to enter the next world. In fact, there's even a statement in Perkovot that this world is just a corridor and it's the next world that matters. I think that's bad advice.
You know, the Alma, the Chikra, and the world of lies, and have you heard that before?
Yeah, I don't believe in all that stuff either.
Okay.
Anything metaphysical, for it to be binding to believe, has to appear in the 5 books of Moses. And I believe that. Everything halachic has to appear both in the Torah and in the Mishnah. That's it. I mean, if something metaphysical appears in the Mishnah and you like it, run with it. But don't exclude others who happen to disagree with you. That's it. If there's a concept that appears in the Torah and then someone wants to call themselves Jewish and deny it, then you could shun them.
Man, I like that. I like that take. I like your stand on that. I mean, I feel a lot attracted by that. By the way you view that, which is rational and it's logical. Nobody should be excluded just because because he or she doesn't hold my belief. As long as the person behaves properly and is in a right standing before God, so that person has to be included. That's that's how I see it.
But that's what the New Testament does. The New Testament excludes everyone who happens not to accept their Messiah as Lord and Savior. Now, one, the Messiah doesn't literally appear in the Torah. And two, why would God be unhappy with you if you happen not to be convinced that someone is the Messiah? If you still hold true to the Torah. I mean, God says that he will either bless you or curse you on the basis of keeping mitzvot. That's it. He said that you keep my hukim, my mishpatim. That's it.
But the Torah speaks about the anointed people, like the priest. Right. So Messiah, that's what it means, right? Anointed, the anointed one.
Right. The word mashach means to anoint. And nowhere in the Torah does it command us to anoint kings.
No, but priests, it does.
Right, no, priests for sure.
Okay.
But not kings. But the notion of the Messiah is a king like David. He's called the son of David. But there is no law to anoint kings. It's a rabbinic law. Heck, there were rabbinic laws in the times of the judges because that's what they were called. The rabbis in the Mishnah were the same judges in Sefer Shoftim. They just started being called something else. This is why I don't like if I'm discussing this with a Karaite or a Christian, I don't like using the word rabbi because they're like, oh, we're rabbis in the Torah. Well, they're the judges. Mm-hmm. The office of the judge is the office that's never spoken about, right? I mean, Christianity and all these offshoots are built off of the priest, the prophet, and the king. But no one talks about the judge.
Right. You're the first one, by the way, that I've ever heard is speaking about the notion of judge.
Yeah, that's right.
Right. Okay, which makes a lot of sense, by the way. All right, Rob, that was, that's what I wanted to ask you. Those were my questions. Thank you very much.
All right, next. Come on, guys. Is there anyone left?
I was going to say, it seems pretty easy to be a prophet then, because anybody can kind of just say, this nation will go to war with this nation. And
no, wait. Yeah, but that's not the job of the prophet.
I know I'm saying in the Christian perspective, I get, or the Western, it's like anybody, if you say, this nation is going to go to war with this nation and that happens, 200 years later, it's like, wow,
there were many prophets that existed at the same time. Mm-hmm. So we just have the books of the prophets, so we think there's only 24 major prophets. I mean, there were many, many prophets. According to Talmud, hundreds of thousands of prophets. And there's prophets even today. It's only a medrash in the Talmud that says that after the destruction of the Second Temple, that prophecy was only given to crazy people and children. And it's only a medrash. Nowhere in the Torah does it say that prophecy is going to end. Nowhere. Well, so we have prophets today. Like if you have someone telling you to return to Torah, he's doing the role of the prophet.
Mhm.
That's it. Now, clearly, there's no Sanhedrin nowadays to test the prophet because we're already in exile. There's also an understanding that a biblical prophet has to have had his start before Israel was exiled. This is also one argument why I think Daniel was not a prophet because he didn't receive his prophecy till later, but Ezekiel is considered a prophet because he got his prophecy in Israel as a prophet before the exile. All these are the rules. All right, next, guys.
Okay, I got another one for you, Rabbi.
Jake.
Okay, so we're going through Vayikra at the moment, right? And I've been reading quite a bit of books on atheism, like I've been reading Dawkins and Hitchens and all that sort of stuff. And I like their perspective, but one thing I can't understand is their moral compass, and they go into that how it evolves, and I still just don't get it. On the other hand, we have Judaism, right, where we say, okay, our laws and our moral compass comes from God, right? So we know that God, in His Torah, He says, "Do not murder, do not kill." So we know that the level of Torah is not to take a life from a human, right? Now, when it comes to an animal, there's a totally different understanding to this. Like, so when we sin, or when, like, we're going through Vayikra, like I say, we have the goats, or, you know, the man with Sarah Atz, where he has to get the two birds and everything like that and do his whole performance. Now, if life is so sacred to God, right, and He even says it in the Sheva Mitzvot B'nai Noach, as far as, like, you know, treat animals with respect. Okay, do not.
It doesn't say that. It says "Aver min achai." It means, like, don't eat the limb of an animal. I know many, like, rabbis say, "Oh, well, this is speaking on ethical treatment." I understand that. I don't think it actually appears like this in the text or in the Talmud. But there's an example of like Rabbi Yehuda Hanassi. This is much later. This isn't in the Torah. That he was struck with a disease because he didn't sympathize with when a calf was being killed. But anyways, the Talmud doesn't necessarily tie Aver min achai with ethical treatment of animals.
That's not the whole point of my question.
Yeah.
So what I'm trying to get at is that we know that death is not a good thing, right? So, but then therefore we have these sacrifices, which seem so 2,000, 3,000 years ago, you know, like, if we are going to progress as a nation, right? This is something that I just struggle with. And we spoke about, you said this before, like, the secret things are for God, right? And this is probably one of these secret things which is just hidden for God that we just don't know about. Like, you know, we're told not to murder, not to kill anyone. Yet if we do a sin, or we do, as a nation, we progress in the wrong way, we're supposed to take the life of an innocent animal and kill it. It's almost like taking, you know, you do something wrong, well, then let's do another wrong thing, and then it makes it good. Like, two wrongs don't make a right. Mm-hmm. So I just don't get this part. Like, you know, like you know, this whole thing, like, with the man, like, when he comes after 7 days of his Tzara'ats, like, he's supposed to get a bird, like, two birds, you know, cut one's neck, drain all its blood, put it in a basin, get this stick of cedar or whatever it is with another bird, and then dunk it in the water, and then let it go free. Like, how do we progress with these sorts of? I don't want to be, you know, but they're backwards thinking. Like, it doesn't. You know what I mean? Like, and the only thing that I can hold on to is that we have a moral compass which is good, which is tied to these ceremonial laws, which are hard to swallow. And that's the only reason I can follow Torah, is because that has a moral compass that comes with laws that I particularly don't like.
Mm-hmm. So this is part of my response.
Probably not a question in that, but
no. This is it's deep here, but so there was a friend of mine he was one of the first Noahides. He actually had smicha. He was made a judge by the new Sanhedrin to judge other Noahides. But anyways, when I was living in Israel, he came out on the news that he was going to be the first Noahide to offer a sacrifice in the land of Israel, and it was recorded. So anyways, I thought he was going to build this beautiful altar. I mean, he pretty much had a barbecue grill there. And that's how he offered the sacrifices. And then after it, he ate the sacrifice. What's the difference between offering a sacrifice and barbecuing? Before killing the animal, you say a bracha. What people say nowadays anyways, when you buy kosher meat, or even like if you're Muslim and you buy halal meat, there's a bracha said over the animal. Well, the only thing is that you're not offering it on the altar, but regardless, it's still being eaten. It's basically the same thing. It seems that sacrifices was also a way, now, but this is just my opinion because the Torah doesn't say, but it seems like it's also a way to make sure that we ate meat. Now, initially, there was no allowance in the Torah for people to eat meat outside of the sacrificial system. And it wasn't until later on, I believe even in Deuteronomy, that's really understood as the repetition of the law, that we have Moses' understanding that outside of the temple, you could still live and eat meat, and that you shall sacrifice the animal in how I showed you, which could mean different things. That doesn't mean there has to be an oral law that they saw illustrated in front of them on Mount Sinai, and this is what it means I showed you. It could mean that just how you saw me slaughter doves, that this is in the same manner how you're going to slaughter cattle, that the blood will be poured on the ground in a similar manner. I'm just saying the whole sacrificial system is not as primitive as we think, unless you're a vegetarian. If you think that all animals just deserve to live, when the biggest killer of animals, at least in the wild, aren't people, but other animals, then you shouldn't have an issue with people burning an animal on an altar, either eating it themselves or giving it to the priest to eat. In the vast majority of cases, I understand that there's some offerings that are completely burnt. I think if you view it like that, it doesn't seem so primitive. Now, to give the Rambam's response, the Rambam writes in Mor Nevuchim in his Guide for the Perplexed, that it's his opinion that the reason God used the sacrificial system was ultimately to wean us away from idolatry, because that was the language that people spoke back then. Blood and altars, and this is the way people communicate with God. Yeah, go ahead.
So how do we take like the goat to Azazel, like, you know? And I don't want to be specific in one point, but it is. It's like we kick a goat off a cliff, like that's backwards. Are you kidding me?
I have to double check that, because I know in the Talmud it says that the goat is killed. Does the Torah say it's not eaten? Let me.
I know one's burnt for the one's slaughtered and burnt as the lot falls on that one for God, and it's burnt to God, and then the other one is taken to a cliff and then kicked off the cliff. That's
no. I understood that it was left to go in a wilderness.
So according to the Torah, it says that it was left to go to Azazel, right, to the wilderness, that people later believe or interpret to mean some demon. And then the Talmud says that it's actually thrown off a cliff. But the Torah doesn't say that it's thrown off a cliff. I mean, that's the rabbi's.
So this could be. So that it could be wrong. This.
No, it's in the Talmud versus the Torah. I don't know who's right at. I mean, I'll take the Torah side
because it goes against, like, it completely goes against what you're saying. Like, okay, if we're going to do the sacrifices in order to eat meat, right, and have a portion for the priests and everything like that, then this whole notion, maybe I've just misread it, maybe the rabbis are mistranslating it or whatever.
It's not in the Torah like that. It's not in the Torah. It's even a curse word in Hebrew. They say that what makes Hebrew a holy language is that it doesn't have any bad words in it. It appears like this in the Talmud. The Rambam reiterates it. There are bad words in Hebrew most bad words in Hebrew are Arabic. Things like benzonah, which is like son of a bee or whatever. And then, like, if you want to send someone to hell, they'll say lech le'azazel. It means like go to hell. But they'll take like biblical words and apply different meanings to it. Why? Because there's a mystical concept that Azazel, that was a demon who lived in the forest. But it's not like that in the Torah.
So we take it more as far as like, okay, this is a provision from God. This is what God is actually doing.
Yeah, but that's one goat. I mean, there's tons of sacrifices all year round, and not all sacrifices were for sin. There's
I understand, and I guess that's my point. Like we do burnt sacrifices for the sake of a burnt sacrifice because God tells us to do a burnt sacrifice. Like, like this one is to be burned up to God as a pleasing aroma. Like
right, and the priests eat the bulk of those sacrifices. Truma, this is how the people in the temple ate. I guess they technically couldn't sell them, but they could sell this to another priest who's allowed to eat truma. I mean, I'm not going to say that it's easy to explain, okay, but this is at least how I justify it, that it's not that foreign, that maybe when there's another temple, it'll be set up in such a way that it still wouldn't break the law, but maybe they'll wrap the sacrifice in like a McDonald's wrapper.
You've got to admit, they're hard things to swallow. Yeah, is it?
Heck, we have a hard enough time trying to justify statements in the Torah, but to have rabbis now on YouTube trying to justify every statement in the Talmud. Okay, so let's stick with the Torah regarding things that we have to like stand by and die because of, and then trying to justify like midrashim and folklore and legend and why do we cover the challah? Oh, well, it's because so then it wouldn't be embarrassed in front of the wine. All these things people take literally, and these are midrashim. Don't waste your time justifying midrashim. Let's focus on justifying Torah. But my whole notion about wrapping the sacrifice in a McDonald's wrapper is because if they would just eat it right after like that, then I'll be like, oh, this is similar to what they do in fast food places, with the exception that I think there's something lost when you don't eat what you kill. Right? I mean, nowadays people could be against killing animals, but they love hamburgers. So I think there's a disconnect there.
Sweet, thanks for that.
Yeah, no problem.
Rabbi, will sacrifices continue to be operative in the Messianic era?
According to the Torah, yeah. There's no such thing as a Messianic era. There are many Messianic eras.
I mean, when the
saints come marching in.
No, I mean for the sin offerings will continue to be brought.
Why not?
No, I'm asking you.
Not going to sin anymore. All these questions are good questions because you have people like the Ramban, who believe that the Messianic age is going to be perpetual, and people, like in many cases, won't be able to sin anymore, and then it's going to be heavenly and this and that. According to the Torah, nothing is going to change, right? I mean, the Torah can't change. Like, why would people assume that people can sin? Now, people work on themselves to such a level that they won't be able to sin, and then like a korban chatat, like won't have to be brought. Korban tamid would still be, like
yeah, that's my question. Korban hatat, for example, not korban, olah, for example, which is the sacrifice will get all burned up, but the sin offering, for example, will that continue to be brought, provided that keeping in mind that people will not continue to make sins, at least not intentional sins. That's what I have heard. I don't know if that's that's true or not.
It's all fluff. It's all fluff.
So people will continue to make sins, even intentional sins.
Why that would you assume that people that won't be able to do intentional sins?
Well, because supposedly the Yetzer Hara will be taken away.
All right. I don't believe that.
Okay, so it's a matter of belief, of believing in that or not of actually being supported by the Torah.
Right. Well, the Torah doesn't say that, but there's another statement in the Talmud. In the Talmud, it says that the rabbis actually got rid of the Yetzer Hara for a small time, and then the animals weren't reproducing. Men weren't attracted to women anymore, and this and that. So then they brought.
I heard that. Mm-hmm.
So they brought the Yetzer Hara back. I mean, don't take these stories literally. Also, the Or HaChaim says that God is going to make chazer. He's going to make pig kosher. That he's going to give it its missing component, right? The kosher pig, right?
Yeah, I heard that.
I mean, are you really going to believe that? I mean, it's just, come on. I mean, the Torah doesn't say this. Like, why the heck would anyone? Okay, it's a nice little story, but let's make distinctions between what the Torah says, between halacha and between agadah. That's it. Why is it that there's no distinction made? I can't blame you guys, because rabbis online don't make those distinctions. They'll elevate agadah with surpassing halacha on the level of Torah Shebiktav. It's all chaos. This is why people who convert to Judaism or people come to Judaism are not the best and the brightest. I mean, there are zombies and people who we don't want in Judaism. Hey, look, religion itself draws nutty people, okay? But the last thing we need as representatives of our religion are nutty people teaching Judaism from an authoritative perspective. And that's what we're dealing with. And this is why all you guys have these questions, because this is what these guys are teaching. The vast majority of these YouTube rabbis are religious, maybe 5 years, 6 years. I mean, they're all about tshuva, okay? Well, they all have a story that they died and they were, in a rock band, or they were an electrician, or they were a poker player, and all this. These guys who are religious, maybe 8 years, now they're like authorities in halakha. Heck, I'll elevate a Christian who's been Christian his whole life, studying the Bible, trying to live on the right path, over someone who's just about chill of 5 or 6 years, who takes midrashim as literal as he takes a Torah. Okay, and we have to use equal scales here, because Judaism is lacking leadership.
I agree with you on that. Yes, it is. 100% it is.
Yeah.